Hey guys, fascinating day today, and just a couple of things I wanted to share with you. I'm very blessed to have such a wide variety of patients, and I absolutely love my Eastern European patients. Oh my gosh, just the humor and the kindness, brilliant cooks, just wonderful people, wonderful people. And just to give you an example, today alone, I had a lot of people from a lot of different countries surrounding the Ukraine who are being directly affected by what's playing out at the moment. And it just made me want to stop and take pause because, especially for my friends in America, I don't know what kind of news you're seeing or what's going on there, but we have a tendency sometimes to see things in a tunnel visioned sort of way, not realizing that there can be a lot more to the picture than just what we're seeing on the news or in the paper or on social media. So I just wanted to kind of put it into perspective a little bit for you. As far as personal opinions as to what's playing out, I am not educated enough about everybody's story involved to make a conscientious opinion. And no matter what position you've studied this issue from, I don't really think there are too many people out there who are able to actually call it as it is, because all they're seeing is what they're reading on social media, really. And then we know that we're always going to have those who are lighting the candle and flying the flag for Ukraine, because what's happening there is terrible. But there's also a lot of other aspects to the story of what's going on that I think people are really unaware of. So as opposed to just the Ukraine, light the candle for everybody concerned, because there are so many people who are being affected by what's going on. And a lot of people don't really realize that. We know about the Ukraine and their resources and what's going on there, but you've got to step back and look at the timing of everything. Like, where'd COVID go? Where's that freaking pandemic gone, y'all? The timing of it is exquisite as far as a power play goes. And who's behind it all? Do we even know who was behind any of the last couple of years and what's going on? But somebody's behind something. I can guarantee you that. But what's really important as we move forward is by talking to people, by dealing with people who've actually been living that history, living that story, where it's been part of the world that they've lived in, because we all didn't come here to experience the same thing. We all weren't born into certain cultures and other political strifes, emotional strifes, monetary strife. We all weren't born into the same thing. If you can picture it, it's like a big patchwork quilt. And right now you're on your patch in the quilt, and you can have interest in other patches that are on the quilt, but your primary interest is the patch that you're on. Now, there could be somebody at the other side of the quilt who's interested in their patch and what's going on and what's surrounding their own patch there, who really doesn't know an awful lot about what's going on your patch. But what's interesting about social media and what it's done to us, first of all, it's turned us into a bunch of idiots sometimes, I think. But it's like, yes, I want to be seen fighting for the cause, and I want to be seen, holding up this side or that side or whatever. And oftentimes what happens is people who really don't know a lot about the subject will tend to align with whichever side they see is most socially, politically, or social media-ally correct, to be seen to be supporting that cause. And it's really interesting. It's not a judgment either way. Y'all know me. I couldn't care, because I support everybody and where they are on their journey and what they're here to learn. But what's interesting is the idea that each of us was born into a certain country, a certain culture, a certain way of thinking, and the history that went with it. And so while in one area of the world we might be super fascinated with what's going on there, or deeply invested or greatly hurt by what's gone on, we then tend to use the news and social media then to jump over into somebody else's trauma when it suits us. And then if they're not invested in our trauma, then we get really mad at them, or they're not switched on, or we cancel them, or whatever. We're fascinating. Like, oh my gosh, what a fascinating time to be alive. But it was really interesting talking. So just today alone, let me show you. So here's the Ukraine right here. So I had in 4 people from Poland. I had one from Hungary. I had several from Romania and one from Moldova. And it's really, really interesting. And look where the Ukraine is right there. And so, oh my gosh, what's the first thing? Is your family safe? Is everybody okay? Oh my gosh, are they furious at Russia? And it's not the same response from everybody based on what their own personal stories are. And so it's not black and white, this or that. The way that we keep being polarized into thinking it's this side or this side. There are the most exquisite, intricate, amazing stories that are playing out all around that are giving each and every one of us the growth, the opportunity for growth and expansion as souls here on earth. And so, for instance, I had, if you look at the positioning of Ukraine and this little country here called Moldova, and I was informed about the world's largest underground wine cellar. Didn't even know about this. I'm not really into wine, but this was so fascinating. And so did you know that there is a wine cellar underneath the ground that takes almost 3 hours to drive through? It's 125 miles long. A wine cellar, right? So can you imagine when they took the trouble to build that tunnel, what else do you think is down there? When you're tunneling out that and you've got the guise of a wine cellar and everybody from the Queen to, the leaders of all sorts of different countries have their personal stashes stored down there. So imagine if you were building one tunnel, would you build another? Probably. So it's fascinating. And so look where it's positioned, right? So imagine if you're poising yourself to come in and you're able to interact with that personal stash. Now, another thing, patient of mine, her family lives right here across the border. So why is she so concerned? Because if her family's right here across the border, if they are, we've already seen where some airports have been blown up, but we've also seen videos of Ukrainian soldiers who are dancing in the streets when the Russian soldiers arrive. What's that all about? Because everybody doesn't see this the same way. Everybody's not having the same reaction. Is that the entire army? No. Is that the whole of the Ukraine? No. But there are other people who are in a completely different position. It's kind of like, go back to the Revolutionary War. There were loyalists, right? And then there were the Sons of Liberty, and you had people who were living in the American colony who were very, very happy about the British being there. And then you had other people who now considered themselves American regardless of their heritage, who were not very happy about the British being there. Do you know? So depending on whose shoes you're standing in, the whole story changes. So I find this interesting that my patient's family is here. So why was this interesting and something that she was deeply concerned about? Because the major airport for that region is in her little town. And so if that airport gets blown up, there's petrol stations all around that, which means basically it becomes a giant firebomb, and her family lives about 5 minutes away. So she has a completely different point of view of what's going on there, and her family is unable to travel at the moment. And so she's very concerned about that. It's really, really interesting. So those who are in, northern Romania are having a completely different experience than somebody who might be living in Bulgaria. And I think it's really important that the best way that we can support our friends who are actually going through this. Now, those of us who might experience a knock-on effect, the prices of our goods, our oil, our diesel, petrol, we're being affected, but we're being affected in a different way. And, that's kind of the trickle-down effect of what's going on. But there are a lot of people who are being directly affected by this, either because they're smack in the middle of it or because their families are there. And so I happen to be living in a place where so many people's families are affected across the board. And these are my Russian friends, and these are my Romanian friends, and my Ukrainian friends, my Polish friends, like across the board. There isn't anybody that I know from that region who is not being directly affected. So I think it's really interesting that when we're on our patch on the patchwork quilt and we're taking up a cause and we automatically start flying the flag for one side or the other, that we forget that everybody isn't experiencing the same story. you know, the killing off of innocent human beings. I don't care what country you're in. That's not a good thing. But is that what's happening right now? Yeah, it is. Absolutely. And who's to blame? I don't know, because that story goes way back. It goes way back further than what I'm aware of. So to point the finger right now at just one cause, when there are people and politicians who could be right under your nose, who could have contributed to this playing out the way that it's playing out right now, just be aware of that. Be aware of that, because what happens then is you end up looking like a big clot when you're like, la, 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 and then, you know, you're not thinking about the other people who have a completely different interaction with this story than you do, and you're actually speaking from a space of being seen and heard as opposed to being informed or helping to support the people that you say you're trying to support. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you because I think it's really important, you know, and I sit back and I just observe and I watch. And have I done that before? You better believe it, man. We're all here growing. I'm still learning. There have been plenty of times where I've jumped on the bandwagon of a cause in the past and gone, hang on. I might not have all the information. Or as Coach Dick Hensley used to say, what, pray tell, if you were wrong? So this is your friendly reminder from here in Athlone, Ireland, that there are so many people across Europe who are experiencing this story, and so many people in America who are experiencing this story in completely different ways and have completely opposing positions as to what's happening and why it's happening. It's really easy to jump on the obvious, but rather than just jumping on the obvious, because that really doesn't help anybody, take some time to educate yourself. Take some time to talk to people. You know, if you're over here and you have access to people who are from that region the same way that I do, chat to them, ask them, get their opinions, because the more stories that you hear, the more informed you can, you can be when you are choosing how to act and react to the situation, whether it's through your vote or through your protest, whatever. That's all I'm saying. Just don't jump on the bandwagon because the bandwagon pulled up outside your door, you know? You wouldn't buy a car without looking under the hood or kicking the tires or whatever. But, you know, it seems like every time a new cause rolls up, we just jump straight on without actually thinking about what we're doing. So that's it for today. I just wanted to share that with you. To everybody who is terrified, frightened, just completely overwhelmed, and not even thinking about the fact that they're so exhausted from having just come out of 2 years of absolute conditioning and terror around a global pandemic that is now gone, more or less overnight. Walking into this, you know, now the kids are coming in. Did you know that we're at war? No, we're not at war, but we've been at war. And they don't even grasp that concept. So that's it from me today, and I wish you all well. I wish you peace in your hearts, and like me, keep learning, keep researching, keep asking questions, because you know what? I'm like, good Lord, what a dope I am. I didn't realize this, that, or the other, or how much was actually involved in it, and so I keep learning. That's how we grow.